Hi everyone, excuse me, it's William Lee back with another one or two entries in Dmitri's 1906 diary. So last time it was rather a long session because we were talking about the 1905 revolution in Russia and how Dmitri did or did not experience it, which is something that remains partly to be seen. And I got a little mixed up because I was talking about General Min, who was the commander of the Semyonovsky regiment who'd been sent to Moscow to put down a serious armed uprising there with barricades and guns and with professional revolutionaries there organizing it and labor leaders. And Min had put that down quite viciously, effectively, but viciously. He went in telling his soldiers immediately not to have any mercy, not to arrest anyone, just kill them. So that was that, and you may recall that Dmitri described a very bloody, gruesome scene in Moscow where he was told that a man was decapitated by a shell and that there was blood splattered all over the walls. And I mistakenly thought that that was Min, and actually Min comes in today in his diary for the not for the 10th, yes, for the 10th, instead of the day before on the 9th. The person who told him this very bloody account was actually his favorite tutor, the man who seems to have been more or less his physical education teacher. And Velter had apparently been in Moscow, and Dmitri says that Velter told him that he had been, or from some distance, had witnessed several of the riots, and apparently was an eyewitness to this whole scene of the man being decapitated. And I wonder if Dmitri understood that correctly, or if Velter was exaggerating, because what would an imperial tutor be doing going from uprising to uprising in Moscow? But that is neither here nor there. The thing is that here he was telling this horrific story to a rather sheltered boy of 14. And Dmitri has, he writes that it's horrible and disgusting. He is a bit detached, I must say. He's not saying, oh, the poor people, or, oh, I guess that was necessary. So, yeah, keep that in mind as we proceed as to where he was with these things, where he was with not only politically with what was going on at that time, but where he was emotionally with his ability to feel connected or to be detached about things. So I think that's something that will be very important throughout the diaries. So this time, let me see. The other thing that two other things that I wanted to touch on because I didn't have time last time, was that his request to read War and Peace, and he didn't think that Laming, Georgy Mikhailovich, was going to let him do that. And I don't think I would probably disagree with that decision on Laming's part, because War and Peace, I think I read it when I was 17 or 18, and even that was a little early. I had to reread it later. So 14 would have been quite early. But having said that, it's clear from this and from other diary entries, including the one today, that Dmitri was he didn't have much agency compared to what, say, a modern teenager would have. He was very closely watched within this household by a variety of people, and watched. What I mean to say is that in this household was very much regimented, and he was told what he could and couldn't do, and probably more so than the average teenager would be. I don't think any of them would be happy with it, but it was what he was used to, and he's not putting up much of a fuss about it, I guess. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was this comment he makes that his Aunt Alex, meaning the Empress of Russia, had told him and his sister that she didn't really want them to come to tea, that it wasn't really convenient for her and the emperor to have them for tea, and that it was better that they should come. What did she say? It was better for them to come to lunch, I think. So, unfortunately, Dmitri doesn't talk about what she told them, if anything, about why it was less convenient for them to be at tea. But I wonder, some of you who are experts on Nicholas and Alexandra can maybe tell me or comment on whether that was their family time with their own children. That I don't know about. But whether it was or it wasn't, Dmitri, of course, his feelings were hurt, and he reacts by saying, "What a joke." And now every time we'll come, we'll wonder if they want us to come at all. And who can blame him for that? These two children who were effectively orphans, they were brought to St. Petersburg to be in close proximity with relatives who would give them some kind of family life, and primarily Nicholas and Alexandra, and here they were feeling not wanted. So, along those same lines, it's interesting to me, as you'll see as we go on, that it was not Nicholas who was telling the children things that could potentially upset them. It was always Alexandra who did that. And I think that was typical of Nicholas, that he avoided any kind of confrontation. He didn't want to be in an uncomfortable position, and so apparently either he delegated that to his wife, or his wife simply recognized the situation and took charge of it. The other possibility being that Nicholas didn't mind them coming to tea and doing the other things that Alexandra objected to, that we'll get into later. But anyway, as of now, that was the state of things. So let's go right ahead with the diary entry for 10th January 1906. Lessons in the morning, then skiing with Monsieur Welter. We had lunch at Uncle Nicky's, and Min, the commander of the Semyonovsky regiment, was also present at lunch. He said very interesting things about Moscow, like how he almost stormed the student dormitory on Presnya where we used to skate. I like Min, but Maria doesn't. A terrible sin. I haven't written to Aunt. Terribly shameful. I slept all right last night despite the bandage, but then at 5 o'clock I woke up and took the bandage off because half of it was on my face. MN has just arrived, Maria Nikolaevna, with a very sad look on her face because she had just been in Riga and now she's sprawled on the huge Turkish sofa in my room. I still haven't got a real sense of learning anything. It doesn't seem like these are real lessons, just more repetition. Today, before dinner, I tried to do an arithmetic problem. I eventually solved it, but not without GM's help. But I did solve the second one myself, though I looked in my black book and found a similar one. I'm going to say good night to Georgy Mihailovich and then go to bed with a compress on my stupid gland. Okay, so Min, who was at lunch with the Tsar and the imperial family, did not apparently tell Dmitri gruesome stories about what had happened in Moscow, although he certainly would have had gruesome stories to tell. But I find it interesting by contrast that Walter would have been alone with Dmitri when he told him these stories and not felt constrained, whereas Min, he wasn't going to do that at an imperial lunch. But he did talk about it, and apparently neither Nicholas nor Alexandra objected to him talking to the children about that, or in the children's presence. And very often the little girls were there as well, the emperor and empress's daughters. So Dmitri, of course, had lived in Moscow, so he knows exactly where this incident with the student dormitory took place, and even recollects that he and his sister had gone ice skating nearby there. So he's still avoiding writing his Aunt Ella, who is in Moscow as this diary entry is being written. He has this swollen gland, if that's what it was. It's not actually even clear where it is on his body, maybe on his neck, because the bandage apparently came unwound and was on his face. But I do wonder, because he later in his diaries, he would write several times about a tendency he had to develop boils, really painful, long-lasting boils, and I suppose those might have been swollen glands, although that's not how he describes them. But for some reason, he was prone to things like that. So I love this line about Maria Nikolaevna, Mrs. Laming, coming back from Riga. I don't know why she had a sad look on her face. Dmitri doesn't elaborate, but I love the way he describes her being sprawled on the large Turkish sofa in my room after having just returned. And what does he mean by his room? I doubt he means his bedroom. I think probably he and Maria both had a suite of rooms, and the Lamings had a suite of rooms, the two of them and their little boy, who was, I think, 7 at the time. But apparently, whether it was because her husband was in there or both children were in there, she went right to Dmitri's room and just sprawled on his couch. So as you can see, there's really no formality. It really is functioning like a family in this household. So, I think that was good. I think Maria actually says in her memoirs, Education of a Princess, that she and Dmitri liked, when they were in Moscow, they liked to spend their time in the Lamings' apartment within the palace, because it was like having a taste they could get of having a normal family life. So finally, we have Dmitri talking about, I haven't got a real sense of learning anything. So he started up his lessons again after the winter break, and yeah, he's dissatisfied because it just all feels like repetition to him. And he was a very intelligent fellow, and he liked learning new things, and he's pretty conscientious, as you'll see, about doing his homework. He doesn't really have to be pushed to do that. And when later on, as an adult, when he was in London, he actually sought out educational opportunities and stuck with them. He took a course that he ultimately found very boring on Roman law, and he complained about it constantly. The teacher was an elderly man who, for some reason, got a bee in his bonnet that Dmitri could actually go into law in London and become a barrister or something like that. And he was very sort of pedantic. And so the lessons were quite boring, but Dmitri kept going as long as he was able to do so. So, is that the last thing? I think that's the last thing. So I'm at 15 minutes. Do I dare do another diary entry, the one for the 11th? And I think I can, because I think it's a pretty uncomplicated one. So here it is, 11th January 1906. I studied in the morning, then went skiing with Monsieur Welter. We had to cross a ditch. I threw my skis over, then leaned on two poles to get across. The ditch was quite deep and filled with water. We lunched at home because we had arithmetic early today. Mikhail Vasilyevich didn't seem very pleased with my homework from yesterday, which of course is very unfortunate. At 5 o'clock, I went to the Alexander Palace to have tea with Aunt Alex and Uncle Nicky. Maria went to congratulate Tatiana Konstantinovna, who is 1 year older today. The Konstantinoviches invited me to Pavlovsk on Sunday. What a bore. There will be other children there whom I don't know at all. Well, I know some of them from when we lived here before. The one thing that will be fun is going sledding. That will be fun. Prokofiev came to me after tea and brought a lot of new tools. I guess I was a little nasty to him because I said all he ever does is bring me new tools, and what on earth am I supposed to do with so many? I'm going to bed now, and apparently they're going to rub iodine on my gland, which, to my disgust, doesn't want to go away. So this is, beginning with the last sentence, this is another instance of him really not being a part of the decision-making process in his own life. Very often he was simply told of an evening that you're going to take a bath this evening, or in this case, you're going to have iodine rubbed on your swollen gland. So let's see. Maria is going. So Dmitri is going, despite what he wrote 2 days ago. He is going to tea at the Alexander Palace with his uncle and aunt, so I'm not sure how that was resolved. Maria, meanwhile, is going to Pavlovsk to spend or to congratulate her cousin Tatiana, who had just turned 16 on her birthday. And Dmitri mentions that both of them are invited to come to Pavlovsk on Sunday, and there are going to be other children there and, fun times. But he doesn't want to go. And this is a real distinction between him and Maria. Maria seems to have been or wanted to be close with her cousin of the same age, Tatiana, and Dmitri doesn't seem to have taken a great deal of pleasure in spending time with his boy cousins at Pavlovsk, or really wanting to play with these other kids. He'd met them before, but there, he was quite an extrovert as an adult, but there was clearly a bit of a shy side to him when he was a child, as you'll see in later diary entries as well. And so the Prokofiev, the woodworking teacher, is back, and Dmitri apparently snaps at him about, why are you bringing me all these things? I don't know what to do with them. And that's another thing to keep an eye on as we keep going with this, that Dmitri was told at various times that he was too grand, that he was too, with people, he was too snappish and giving orders, and he was really taken to task for that, as we'll see. And it becomes clear that he also had a bit of a temper, and he was trying to deal with both of those things. He'd been told in both instances that he needed to improve, and he was genuinely trying to. So, until next time, do svidaniya, and have a good whatever interval of time until the next one. Okay, bye.